The video you're about to watch has been designed to take you deeper, higher, and wider into Yahweh. Enjoy, and please subscribe. Thank you. You know, we're sitting in the dark, and someone actually made a comment on the previous teaching, and it said, it's because we speak in the mysteries. But I also understand something in the spirit that's taking place, because the Father didn't make a joke when he said to me that this night will be significant. Now, in the same breath, in Orlando, I said this, there's 80,000 Christians coming together in prayer and worship right now, as we speak. Right? There's a dimensional shift that's taking place. You have to remind yourself that as sons and daughters, we operate, and it's not to boast or to think higher of ourselves in any way, fashion, or form, but we operate out of a different dimension that the church is. And I've shared the testimony that Ian shared, and I love it, that the farmer prays. Have I shared it yet? I shared it in the beginning. So you have an idea. The farmer prays and the son prays. Or the farmer prays, the son goes into the court. It's a whole different ball game. So we need to understand, I want you to become aware of your spirit man. Because there's some serious stuff about to take place. So what we're going to do is I'm going to share a message. Again, it's recap, but it will be pretty intense because we did a 30-week series on the blood. So I'm going to recap on that. You're thinking, 3 hours from now. That's great. But afterwards, what I want to do, and I've already spoken to Craig and to Terry, afterwards, it will be in a flow as much as we can. I want to take everybody up into an ascension. Basically, we are going to come up and going to kind of share what each of us are experiencing and seeing, and I want you to go in there with us. I believe there's going to be some legislation taking place. I believe there's going to be some shifting, some spirit beings coming into the atmosphere and aligning things into creation. Okay, what I want you guys to do is please put your cell phone light on and put on a seat next to you. Because I can't see anything or anybody right now. Smile, and I see a teeth. That's looking a little bit better. Okay, Father, we just want to thank you and praise you and absolutely glorify and magnify your incredible, majestic name. And Father, we are already in the Spirit beginning to experience your glory and fire, but we want more. We want to go deeper, higher, wider, and we want to understand and perceive all that you're about to release and reveal to us. We ask, Father, that you'll open up our hearts. Open all of who we are and what we need to be doing right now. If there's a mandate that's being released to a company of people, let's begin to perceive what needs to be done. We've had an extreme and awesome day today up to this point, but if there's some serious stuff that needs to be taking place right now, let's take our focus off of what we experience in the natural, and let's go into the spiritual reason for what is this. So, Father, we are speaking about your blood, and we're beginning to understand we haven't touched base on your blood yet. We are now slowly but surely beginning to understand the magnitude of the revelation that's in your blood. Mark Steen talks about 10 dimensions of the blood. And we're beginning to look at the dimension of who you are and what you bring forth, and the power of your blood, and the idea of it being congealed light, the fact that it's portholes, the fact that it is our access in, the fact that it's literally that dimension of who Yahweh is that takes us out of time and space and puts us in a dimension where we are completely locked and sealed into all of who Yahweh is. Matter of fact, we go through the blood and we become pure and holy and set apart. Yes. So, Father, I pray tonight you'll bring us to a place of revelation regarding the blood of Yeshua. Open our hearts and pour into us all that we need to know. Amen? Yes. Okay. Engaging with Yahweh has always been one of the most incredible things. I mean, I don't know if you guys can remember in the beginning. I remember when I just gave my life to Yeshua or to Jesus, it was excessive. My life was changed. It wasn't changed immediately like Craig was saying. You know, I remember sharing my testimony with a lady, and halfway through my testimony, she stopped me. And she said, "Wow, but you can swear?" Wow. Because that was my specialty. I literally had an Olympic I was an Olympian when it comes to swearing. I actually invented some of the swear words you guys still use today.
Oh, we don't swear.
It's funny, I repent on a regular basis because now I'm in a country where people don't understand my mother language. Matter of fact, most Americans don't even know what Afrikaans is. Ek kan sê wat ek wil. Niemand gaan verstaan wat ek sê nie, so ek kan letterlik enige woord gebruik en ek kan enigiets sê en niemand gaan weet waarvan ek praat nie.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But what I find myself doing when I get a little bit frustrated or angry, I will swear in Afrikaans. and it would almost feel like it's justified because no one understands what I'm saying. But the father says, hey. Okay, I get it. It's just funny. But I remember going through the phase of change. And in the beginning you're so obedient. You want to listen to every voice. You want to do everything he says. And it just carries on, and you're getting all this information, and it's incredible. I mean, I gave my life to Yeshua when the Toronto blessing just started. That was freaky. You think this is freaky? That was freaky. People were shaking and laughing and rolling and screaming and shouting, and I was like, yeah. I mean, I came out of a Dutch Reformed church where they don't even play music in church. You get baptized with 3 drops of water. And that's faith. I mean, that's faith, because the word baptism means to go under, so 3 drops of water can cover you. Those guys have lots of faith. So I was in shock, and I was freaked out because I wanted it. I wanted to shake. Why? But I wanted to shake. I wanted to love. I wanted to cry. I wanted to experience all those things, but I didn't immediately. I didn't understand it, so I just didn't engage it. But I went deeper and deeper and deeper, and every step I took got me to where I am tonight. Everything, and I don't even agree with everything. If I look back at the things that I was taught, if I look back at the things that I went into, I don't believe everything anymore because my revelation and my intimacy with Yahweh has changed and brought me to a higher level. But the basics has always been fully and true. It's the blood of Yeshua, it's the cross, and that's the basics. I believe Jesus Christ is the Lord of my life. He is the King of Kings, and I engage with him, right? But when it comes to the blood, there's something that we've missed. There's a dimension that opens up, that pours into me and opens up for me, so much so that I get to go into the kingdom of heaven, where I get to see my Father, walk with my Father, and experience the fullness of who he is. Yeah. And I begin to understand that when I operate in the light, which is now seen as the conjugate dimension light, dimensional light of his blood, I walk in a dimension where there's no time and space. And I've said this before, I go into the kingdom of heaven and I begin to realize that my encounter today, when I have to leave, I can go back into that same encounter. But it all happens through the blood of Yeshua. Now his desire for me is to trust him. Now remind yourself, the thing that we're teaching tonight is not something you can go study or read. So you have to trust. First of all, you have to trust what you're hearing, and you have to trust yourself. But the idea behind everything is that you trust the God in me. You trust the God in Terry, and you trust the God in Craig. That's the idea. You trust that just like I trust the God in my wife. But I trust the God in my sons and my daughters. So I don't have to freak out because of the natural instinct to think, oh, they're going to do this or they're going to do that. I trust the one that I worship, and which lives and moves and has their being in them. With that perception, you get to perceive what I say and run with it. That's why I say, get out of your soul and stay in your spirit. Because the trust that the Father has opened up for us through the blood of Yeshua takes you into a dimension where you get to know and perceive that he wants to bless you. He wants to increase you. He wants to grow you. He wants to take you to a place that you've never been before. Like Isaiah 2 says, he wants to teach you. He wants you to operate out of the mountain of Zion, out of the mountain of the Lord, so that he can teach you. Yes. And it all takes place through the blood. Yes. We're beginning to understand that heaven witnessed everything that happened on the earth. And I'm going to understand, there was praise. There was excessive joy when Yeshua's blood was shed. Because it opened up gateways. Yeah. It opened up doorways. It opened up portholes for us to come back in. As a matter of fact, we're beginning to understand it's the only way back in is through Yeshua's blood.
That's right.
That is incredible. His desire for us is to begin to run with all that He's made available. If the blood is the door, of course, Yeshua's the door, but the blood is attached to who He was.
That's right.
And it wasn't normal blood like we perceive it. Right. Yeshua, at His glorified state, had a literal open hole. And we understand that Thomas stuck his hand in there, right?
Yeah.
Now, history, if you study history, Thomas went to India and literally caused one of the biggest revivals ever seen on the face of the planet. Because he went into the was before the was. Matter of fact, no other Christian, no other human being on the planet went there but him. So there goes our theory on doubting Thomas.
That's right.
Because he did something none of the other disciples did. Why wouldn't you do that? There's a hole in someone's side where there's no blood. There's a hole in someone's hands, but there's no blood. I don't know, that will freak me out. Because first of all, you don't stick your arm or your hand in the side of someone's wound if it's a day old.
That's right.
Because thou shalt get us a slap. If you just touch that wound and it's going to be a fivefold, right? That's just logic.
Yeah.
So if he could stick his hand to the side, there was something different about him at that point. Because every drop of his blood was shed. So much so that water and blood came out of the side.
Right.
And we understand at any given time when there's water and blood most of the time, it's because of a birth.
Right.
That's right.
Oh. That's right. That's right.
So out of the side of Yahweh comes the bride.
Right.
Just like out of the side of man came the bride.
That's right.
And so we are birthed out of him, just yet to go back in.
Yes.
Why? Because it's the Hebrew.
Right.
You have to return back to the beginning. Because that's his desire. He has literally opened up a dimension for us to go into. That's why I give my life to Jesus and he lives in me. But that's not the end of it.
Right.
Because if he just lives in me, then he's not complete and utter Lord. It's only when I surrender myself and also shift into him that he becomes Lord and I have given him lordship.
Right.
Yes.
And that is when I get to go into the kingdom of heaven, where he opens up dimensions for me and he begins to teach, train, and equip me to become the man or the woman that he's destined for me to be, according to who I am on that which is written on my scroll.
That's right.
Because we are beginning to understand that I agreed to something that was read with my name on it before I was sent to my mother's womb.
That's right.
And the blood is what's opening up for us what we need to go back into. How you guys doing?
Great.
Woo. You're beginning to understand, and I need you to see that your blood is as much light as what Yeshua's blood is. Because I'm in Christ, and right now, the blood that flows through my veins is a porthole in.
Right.
The blood that flows through my vein is light, congealed light.
That's right.
I am not a natural human being.
That's right.
I have ignited with Christ. I'm in him and he's in me. We are one. Whatever he is, I am partly the exact same thing.
That's right.
Which means I no longer, the Bible says I'm a new creature.
Yeah.
I'm not the same old guy. I'm a whole new being. Matter of fact, what I am right now has never been on the face of the earth.
Right.
You know, Jesus was the seed. And how many of you understand the seed and the apple does not look the same?
Right.
Matter of fact, I can't look at an apple seed and say, oh, that's an apple. Let me taste it. It does not taste like an apple.
Right.
Matter of fact, it's bitter and it doesn't taste nice. Right. But the fruit of the apple seed is what we are.
Yeah.
And within the fruit of the seed, there's multiple seeds. But remind yourself, the seed first has to grow to become a tree that bears fruit.
That's right.
So in the process of Yeshua's death and resurrection and ascension was a dimension of growth that took place so that we can now step into him and become the fruit of the seed that was sown.
Right.
Meaning that his desire for me is to begin to understand who I am and what I need to bring into creation, because I am to multiply his image into creation in its full capacity.
That's right.
But I have to understand that I am more than what the seed has ever been.
Right. Carry on.
Oh, you say, well, that's not what it's supposed to be like. Yahweh, Jesus is the all in all. No, he was my example, and he said, you must do greater things than I did.
Right.
So his desire for you is to understand that in him you are to be greater than what the earth has ever seen.
Right.
He has left me completely and utterly clean, pure, set apart, and holy. I get to walk in that fullness because of the blood.
That's right.
I get to understand what runs through my veins is no longer normal. Who I am is no longer normal.
Right.
I am no longer a human being. I'm now a spirit being.
That's right.
Which has never been on the face of the earth.
Right.
Now, I remind you of this. I've been a Christian for almost 30 years. But I've only been walking in this as a spirit being for 7 years. So that takes 23 years off of my Christian walk, where I believed that I was a different creation. But only realizing now that I've only been a different creation for 7 years. Where I've shifted from being a human being to becoming a spirit being. And it happens through entering in through the blood. Because that's the dimension of recreation that takes place as I go higher and higher in the spirit to find out who I really truly am. Does that make sense? I've said it before. We begin to understand that there's portholes in our blood cells. There's portholes in the blood of Yeshua. And so the idea behind what he's done is for us to have a revelation regarding the access we have, not just into the heavens, but the access we have into every place he has ever put his feet.
Yes.
Now, if you understand, Yeshua was the creator of all things.
Right.
And all things was created for him, which means he had to physically touch everything that's been created in all universes.
That's right.
Which means I have the capacity to go in any realm, any dimension, and any kingdom that was created by his hands.
Yes.
Because that's the trace and the record of the DNA of his blood.
One.
And that's part of the covenant. The covenant was not just so I can have salvation. The covenant is that I can be restored.
Yes.
It's not about salvation, it's about restoration. And we're beginning to understand as I step in through the blood, the restoration that takes place literally retransformed me back into that place where I was originally called out to be. Now, I understand that I'm not to be transformed back into the image of Adam.
Correct.
I'm literally transformed back into the fullness of who Yeshua is.
Right.
He is my example, and it's not just him in his birth and in his death and the space in between.
Right.
It is from the very beginning, before time was time,
Right.
to the very end, before the end was the end.
That's right.
There is no end.
Oneness.
But that is my example. All of who he is who I need to walk out in creation. That is who I need to be.
That's right.
Yes.
You guys okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're loving it.
See, it's in the blood that I am transformed.
Yeah.
Because it's the blood that opened the gates. It's actually the blood that is the gate. It's the choice of Yeshua to take the one part of him that was literally connected to his mother.
Right.
Because it's that part that gave him access into the natural.
Right.
Now, I also want to remind you that by the time he got to the cross, the DNA of his mother in him was seared by the transfiguration on that mountain.
That's right.
And that's, of course, where the Father wants us to get to that place of transfiguration. But I want to say that Yeshua, in that time of shedding his blood, the only reason he could physically shed his blood for us was because he was a 100% human being. He gave up his deity. And it's the only reason that he had that capacity to do what he did was because of the DNA of his mother.
Right.
So I'm not completely discarding my physical body. Because of my physical body, I have an inheritance in the earth.
Right.
Because of my body, I get to do things in the heavens and in the earth. That's why Enoch is still walking in creation today.
Yes.
That's why Elijah is still walking in creation today.
That's right.
And that is also why we'll still find Yeshua walking through the walls in our meetings.
That's right.
Yeshua coming in because he has the capacity to.
That's right.
But the Father is calling for a company of people that enters and live in the fullness of the blood that has access for the natural and the supernatural.
Yes.
We begin to understand that we have the capacity and the ability to do the things that Yeshua did and greater because of the DNA that we are aligned with in creation.
Yes.
And of course the fact that we are in his image and we are fully congealed light, operating out of that dimension into creation to establish that which he wants us to release. And what we are to release is what we see in the heaven. Meaning, going back to Hebrews 11 verse 1, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Meaning that from out of the kingdom of heaven, my spirit has to go in and take what's unseen to the natural eye and recreate it into the natural, so that the DNA that I'm having inheritance in can form a substance that's physically seen and visible.
Right.
That's where we're going to begin to see the riches from the heavens coming into the earth. Now that's not a subject I want to go into, but the Father has spoken to me several times and said, there'll be a day, my son, where you will bring things from out of the kingdom of heaven into earth.
Yes.
Meaning I'm going to magically have things appear from the natural, or from the supernatural world to the natural world.
Yes.
Right.
You know, I think it's Justin Abraham that shares testimonies of a gentleman that would go into a park with several people, and he would gather them by starting to preach messages and just sharing some things. And eventually what he does is he sticks his hand in the air, and his hand disappears. Then he pulls out of the mid-air a scroll. Then he gets out of the kingdom of heaven. He opens it up and he will start reading it. Have you guys ever heard him talk about this? And that's incredible. And everybody in that meeting, everybody that's there gets saved, born again, because of what he's reading.
Yes.
Right.
I only understand there's a time and season that has to come where we begin to understand what the blood did. The access given has opened up every dimension for me, and I get to perceive and understand and receive all of who I am in creation.
Yes.
If I'm not going to die right now because I don't even believe in death anymore,
Come on.
so if I'm not going to die, I'm going to have to be able to do the things that my spirit does. Because the connection between my spirit, my soul, and my body is increasing in intimacy daily.
Yes.
I am reinstating my soul and my body in Christ in the kingdom of heaven on a daily basis by faith.
Right.
And there's going to be a day where my soul and my body literally shifts into the kingdom of heaven. Where my spirit, soul, and body literally, physically come back into creation with the fullness of His glory, breathing through my nostrils into all of what I touch and feel on.
That's right. Redeemed.
See, it's just the Father's desire for us to begin to understand.
Right.
Through the blood, we understand the love that He carries for us. It's deeper than what we perceive. And I always say this, and I know that it's a shock if you just hear it, but just listen me out. He doesn't love you. He's not that type of God. Because we misunderstand love. You know, if my kids are good, they feel more loved. If my kids are bad, they feel less loved. But if they do something naughty, we shout, scream. We're very talented. And then my neighbors go, "You're at it again. Bunch of crazy nuts." But the reaction we have naturally is when I have been bad, I'm loved less. If I've been good, I'm loved more. But Yahweh, He is love. His love for me is not by what I do and what I decide to get into. His love for me is just because of who He is. It's consistent and overwhelming and more than what I can fathom or understand. It's unconditional. It has no value and it takes no value, if that makes any sense. It's the fullness of who He is that overshadows me. His liquid love is what runs through the veins of Yeshua that now runs through me. That's why the love of God leads man to repentance. The love of God, the love of a son that walks in creation, that has the banner of love, that walks with the mantle of love, that has the baton of love in him and on him. Literally, everywhere he goes, projects the love of Yahweh, and people are drawn to him. Yeshua walked in, and there was thousands following him, because he carried the dimension of love that's not given in the natural. And all of this comes through the blood. It's the access we have as we go in. The access that He has opened and made available for us as we literally go into His side. That's why I always say the difference between the church and the ecclesia is that the church says Jesus is in me. And that's kind of where we're at. But the ecclesia statement is Jesus is in me and I'm in Him.
Yes.
Now if you understand that concept, that's impossible. I can't be in Him and He can't be in me at the same time. So that has to be a spiritual thing. That's in the beyond the veil state.
Right.
That's in the kingdom of heaven. We're beginning to understand that because of the blood of Yeshua, I have the capacity to recreate everywhere I go. That's why when I speak, that's where the chords come in. I get to understand the value of my breath. I have to understand the power of what I have in me when I speak, because I carry the fullness of Yahweh. I carry that dimension of who He is in me that restored me to the fullness, restored everybody around me to His fullness, because no one, according to Yeshua and what He did, has sinned.
Right.
It's only when you're outside of Christ that you're not covered by what He did on the cross.
Right.
So if Yahweh looks at me right now, no matter what I'm doing, He doesn't see my sin.
Right.
Do you guys understand that? Now, of course, we are sons and we are daughters, and we are daughters. We have grown out of much of what we were into previously. But because of the blood, He does not see my sin. He only sees the act of love His Son gave on the cross.
Right.
And so there's a company of people that He desires to begin to perceive the value of what the blood did. Because it's a transformation that takes place, and we begin to elevate to a deeper, higher, wider place in everything we do. Now, we understand that we have been trying to go into heaven for several years now. Now, we are a company of people that literally operates out of the kingdom of heaven, and we begin to do phenomenal things. But the Father has established a company of people now within creation that has to legislate the kingdom of heaven into place.
Right.
It's not about going up anymore. It's not about going into heaven. I live there nonetheless. But it is now my focus is to bring things into creation, legislation, alignment, going into the courts of heaven and legislate nations, legislate cities, states into place and into alignment. Now, like Terry said, everybody doesn't have the authority or the framework for that right now.
Right.
But you are growing into it, and so the practice is consistent and all the time.
Right.
But I want to put this in your mindset. Focus on the fact that everything we're experiencing today is due to the blood of Yeshua.
Yeah.
Of course, the blood enables us to an endless, powerful life.
Yes.
An endless life. Now, scientifically, we're beginning to understand that we were not designed to die. Matter of fact, every 7 years, your body, your organs are supposed to reprocreate themselves. Is that a word? I think I just made that up. They have to recreate themselves every 7 years. But it's not doing it because of what we're taking in. So we're supposed to literally have new organs every 7 years. And of course, they say your heart's designed to just continue to work all the time. Now you look at what Moses ate and what Adam ate and what the disciples ate. If you compare, they didn't have McDonald's. And I know they're going, oh, come on. It would have been nice. They didn't have the rubbish in our food that we have now. You know, Noah lived until he was 950 years old. He had his first child when he was 500. Well, I don't want to be funny. That's just crazy. It's crazy to think that you have your first child at 500. And we can't even have our first child at 50. You know, never mind 150, and never mind 100, never mind 80. As a matter of fact, by the time 70 comes, that's not even a functional thought. Because the last thing you're going to worry about is having a child. You're thinking of your back pain and your knees and your hips and your shoulders and the glitch in your download and are you my wife? But the Father is getting us to begin to understand. You see, I have to believe this stuff for me to begin to really operate and function in my life. Because that's not a principle that's going to fade away. It's an old school principle, you know, if you believe you receive, if you doubt you go without, but that's not a principle I can throw out. That still stands. Because all this stuff sounds incredible, but the reason we're not having it is because we don't believe. You know, I had an incredible meeting for myself. I think my meetings are incredible. So I get home and I say to my wife, I had an incredible meeting, baby. It was wonderful. And she says, you know, the problem is in your soul. And I'm like, what? Focus.
Yeah.
She looks at me and she says, the problem is in your soul. I'm like, I don't have a problem. I had an awesome meeting. What part of that don't you understand? But, you know, she's been in the spirit. She comes and says, that's the key. Transforming your soul.
That's right.
And that's what the blood does.
Yeah.
It takes your soul through that process of transformation, because I have to, as a spirit being, overshadow the way my soul thinks with the thoughts of heaven and the thoughts of Yahweh to such an extent that I no longer think the way I do.
That's right.
But I made an example for someone said to Ian Clayton once, well, okay, what I need you to do is stick your finger into the rock. And he was like, okay, well, you can't do that. And he said, okay, well, fine, but just stick your finger into the mud. So he sticks his finger in the mud, and he says, okay, now stick your finger into the rock. And, you know, you can't stick your finger into the rock. But I'm not understand it, it's just because of the way we think.
That's right.
You might say, well, it's not just the way we think. Well, if you believe, you will receive.
That's right.
If I look at Yeshua, he had a capacity of revelation that I'm not walking in,
Right.
because he comes from his mother's womb into creation, fully aware of the kingdom around him.
Right.
Nothing gets shut down. Everything stays open for him
Right.
because of the DNA that he's birthed into.
That's right. Papa's DNA.
How many understand? He wasn't born into sin like I was.
That's right.
Oh, well, that's not fair. That makes it easier for him. No, it's because of the record of his DNA.
That's right.
Now that I'm born again, I'm birthed out of sin.
That's right.
It's no longer a record of my blood. It's no longer in my DNA to continue to sin. If I choose to, that's my choice. But I don't need to, because that record of sin is no longer in my bloodline.
That's right.
That's what happened in the rebirth.
Yeah.
But we're also beginning to understand it's not a rebirth, it's a reactivation.
That's right.
Because my spirit's never a baby.
That's right. Our soul.
My spirit's an ancient being with all knowledge, all power, all insight, all wisdom, all revelation.
One.
It's my soul that needs to get reactivated into who it used to be.
Right. Christ.
And my body, well, my body is a slave to my soul.
Right.
You got okay?
Yeah.
The Father has designed you to live forever. That's why I eat of him, and that's why I drink of him. But I said it earlier today, I eat and drink of him in the spirit, and that revelation has to sink into my soul and my body. That's why it's a consistent thing. Eat and drink of me as often as you can. Why? To change the belief system of my soul.
That's right.
Because let's be honest, if I have to start telling you that grass is not green, I'm going to have to do a little bit more than just telling you that it's not green. I'm going to have to whitewash your brain. There's going to have to be a serious glitch, because all you've ever known in your life is that grass is green.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that that's kind of where we're at right now, because it's a different truth. Grass is green. Right, but for you to believe that grass is not green, it's going to be a whole process to change the way you perceive. Because we say, we close our eyes, we bite into an onion, and we say, oh, that's an onion. Why is it an onion? Why is it grass? Who thought of that? Why couldn't I be the one that names it? I wouldn't call an onion an onion. No, I wouldn't call an elephant either. But what I'm saying is, the Father's major focus right now is to change your belief system.
Yes.
Matter of fact, if I engage with the Holy Spirit, that's his focus. His focus on me is to change the way I think.
Right.
Change the way I perceive things. Change the way I look at things.
Right.
Exciting, right?
Yeah.
We also understand the blood is a covering.
Right.
The blood is that part of Yahweh that I go into that overshadows me. Because it's the blood that I have access into every part of who Yahweh is, every part of who Yeshua is, and it's because of the blood that I get to see him face to face. I get to engage with the angels. I get to go into the seven spirits. I get to spend time at realms and dimensions that I've never set out to spend time in before. It's because of the blood that I get to go into judgment, and the judgment to me is life.
Yes.
Where any form of judgment outside of him is death, not education.
That's right.
But in him, the judgment is to propel me, to take me higher, to lift me up, to teach me, guide me, to literally shift me, and to take me to new places.
Yes.
The judgment is to show me for who I really truly am.
Yes.
But that's because the blood's the covering.
Right.
You guys okay, Phil?
Yeah.
I'm trying to make sense of all of this, but sometimes I just speak and I don't always know if I'm making sense.
Yeah.
The Father's desire in this process as we grow and as we become what we're supposed to be is to send us into creation. Now that's where we are right now. I don't know if you know that. We're in a time of our walk with Yahweh where he is calling us to go into creation. You know, several times, and this is a little bit strange, but several times in my month or in my week, I will find myself as a spirit being coming out of the kingdom of heaven, and I would literally just walk over nations. And I don't know why I do that. I know that the Father says, wherever you put your foot, that place belongs to you. But I remember starting off very small. I started in my lounge. Now, in my lounge is my seat that's in the kingdom of heaven in my house.
Right.
So I'll sit on my seat, and I will begin to awaken my spirit. So I am spirit. My spirit will jump out of my body. Not quite jump, but maybe just a little jump.
The great escape.
My spirit will come out, and I will sit on my couch, and I would say to my spirit, okay, start walking. My spirit will start walking through the house. My spirit would go into my son's room, and my spirit will literally lie over my son, and the vibration and the frequency of heaven will overshadow him, and I will start doing that. I would do the same to my son, my other son. I would do the same to my daughter. I would go into my wife's room, and I'll do the same with my little son and my wife as well. My spirit would go in them and begin to overshadow them with the glory and the frequency of Yahweh. Then I would find myself start walking into the street, and I'll begin to overshadow. So I'll expand my spirit man. My spirit man will be expanded over the house.
Right.
And it will release that frequency of heaven into and over the house. I'll do the same in the street. I will do the same eventually over the neighborhood. Eventually I will stretch and I'll do it over the whole of Slidell, over the city. I'll go over the leaders, over the city's police, over the city's government, and I'll overshadow over the glory of Yahweh. I will continue to extend until I'm completely overextended the state. I will shift from the state, and I would go even wider. I would begin to go into 3, 4 states. It was a process to see the expansion of my spirit man and who I am. See, whatever you have in your heart, you can change.
Right.
And so you can't just go in and change everything. You can't just have everything in your heart. But it's a process of learning. You have to take the governance given to you according to what's written on your scroll and begin to expand. That's why at this point I find myself walking as a spirit being probably the size between 13 and 1,500 feet in the air, walking over nations. Not because I'm actually doing anything per se, but I believe that the Father is wanting us to begin to see who we are and the value of who you are as a spirit being. Yeah. The ability to go into creation where no one can see what you're doing, but every time you put your foot down, you're taking back governmental authority from the enemy. Because the Bible talks about this, and I want you to understand it. It says in Ephesians, it talks about powers, principalities, and rules of darkness of this age seated in heavenly places. Am I right?
Right.
But it also says that we are seated in Christ in heavenly places.
Yes.
How many of you know those are the same places? But Satan is limited to the kingdom of earth.
Right.
So his places is only in the kingdom of earth.
Right.
The realm and the dimension within the earth. My seat goes much higher than that.
That's right.
Because I'm a multidimensional being. He's not. He's limited because he has fallen.
That's right.
So the idea is that as I begin to overshadow, as I begin to walk and operate out of the courts, I get to understand and perceive what I need to take back from the enemy.
That's right.
Because he has no right to have a seat.
That's
because
right.
I remind you, the seats he's on, it's not him chilling on a couch.
Right.
It's a throne that he's occupying illegally.
That's
Now,
right.
I say illegally, but legally he's allowed to be there because we did not occupy it.
That's right.
Because of our ignorance, we've literally given it over to him.
Right.
So we can take it back because he actually has no right in my kingdom.
That's right.
He does not have a kingdom, and therefore he can no longer operate as if he has a kingdom. It's my responsibility to take back what's mine. I'm supposed to be on the thrones.
That's right.
I'm supposed to be occupying the mountains, and the angels are supposed to be established on these mountains and on these thrones,
That's right.
governing with me.
That's right.
Now, you understand that? That's right? I want you to perceive that the Father is looking for a company of people that has entered through the blood, that has been educated and trained, and sent in to legislate the fullness of who we are into place, to align creation with what it was originally intended to be.
Right.
It's a higher, deeper place than what we perceive. If you look at Enoch's life, now I ministered on this just the other day. Enoch was a man of faith. I mean, he didn't have the understanding and perception that we have. He didn't have the bondage of religion that we have. When he walked, all he wanted was to engage with Yahweh. When he started going into the kingdom of heaven, the revelation he came out with was intense. I mean, he was a different being. Now, I want to remind yourself that his grandson, Noah, literally was from a different generational bloodline of something that we can't perceive. If you read the book of Noah, it literally says that at his birth, he opened his eyes and he lit up the room. How many of you know we could do with that right now? He had a different DNA. He was of a different kind. And I am telling you, it's because of the engagement of his father, his grandfather, and the bloodline that was released into creation after that deep walk with the Father. Now, I said this before, and I don't know how people feel about this, but my children are not in any way, fashion, or form birthed into sin. Now, you'll say, well, everyone's birthed into sin. No, they can't all be birthed into sin because I was transformed by the blood of Yeshua before I made my children. Their birth was different than mine. I was birthed into sin. They are not birthed into sin. They can still choose to sin, but they are birthed out of the DNA and the bloodline of Yeshua. Because my bloodline's changed. It's not connected to my mother, my father anymore. If you look at Enoch, walking so close with Yahweh that he's taken out of this atmosphere. And of course, it wasn't just one visit. He engaged with Yahweh so many times that it was like a normal thing to go into the heavens. Now, if you have ever played the game telephone, you know, you have a story shared on one point with several people sitting in one queue, and he shares the story, and by the time it gets to the end, it's not even remotely the same.
Right.
Well, Enoch had the privilege of being right in the beginning. So what he knew about Yahweh wasn't corrupt like what we have today. His engagement was pure. His heart was pure. Sin wasn't rampant and all over the place to the multitude of what it is now. He was birthed into a whole other place. He had that complete desire to walk with Yahweh. He was taken up several times. Eventually, he was pleasing Yahweh so much that Yahweh just wanted him to stay there. That is a forerunner of what's happening right now.
Yeah.
A company of people that's that intimate with him. A company of people that says yes daily and run with that fullness. See, the Father wants us to understand, wherever you are as a son, no matter where you are, what city you go to, what state you go to, what nation you travel through, as a son, everywhere you put your foot, you open up a porthole.
That's right.
Yes.
You open up a porthole for His glory. And of course, we have this all over creation. This church, where we are right now, it's a porthole for the angelic and for us to enter in. It's a dimension of His glory poured into the earth because of what's taken place here. The record of intimacy and worship. And that happens in several different places all over the earth. But now it is happening in a different dimensional place because of sons. Because sons carry a multiple amount of power beyond what the normal church age walked in.
Right.
Now, it's not visible. It's not something you can just see. You know, because... I don't want to go into that. It's not something you can physically see. It happens in the background. It happens in the secret place.
Right.
It's not revealed to everybody. But we're beginning to understand the Father's desire for us is to walk in that fullness. Wherever you put your foot as a son. Because I don't walk in the natural. I mean, I can't say, well, Chuck, I put my foot in this building. That means, according to the Bible, this place belongs to me. Get out of here. Right? This is not going to work then. I can't go into Walmart and say, okay, that's it. This place belongs to me now. Get out. You know, because it's not something physical. But in the spirit's a different place. It's a different understanding. I get into the spirit realm. I begin to place my foot into different places, and that place belongs to me. And everywhere I put my foot, it opens up a porthole for His glory in the earth.
That's right.
And that's a small portion, a small part of legislation.
Right.
Right? How you guys doing?
Great.
I'm trying to run through this as quick as possible. Is it making any sense?
Yeah.
You know, I look at my walk with Yahweh over the last couple of years, and I just see how much I've changed and who I've become. You know, in the beginning, it was all about, in our ministry, and I'm not boasting in this, it's ridiculous to even think that you can boast in this, but we raised the dead 3 times. And if I can include the cat, then it's 4 times. And it was incredible. We've seen some crazy miracles. I always share this, but my favorite miracle was when I prayed for a man's heart. It was a failing heart. He was put on a donors list already. He was waiting for a heart. His heart was failing. And as I was praying, it was like his rib scratched me from the inside of my hand.
Yes, Lord.
And the week after that, he called me and said they've taken him off the donors list. He's completely healed. You know, so a bunch had happened in the old. It was all about the signs and the wonders, and all about the miracles, and praying for the sick and seeing them healed, raising the dead. That was incredible. And it was funny. I remember praying for a young man who was brain dead. And eventually, after I prayed for him, the doctor came in, and apparently by law, the doctor has to greet the brain dead patient just in case there's any form of response. And as he comes in the room and he says, "Good morning, Les." Les sits up. The guy runs out, throws his file in the air, and runs.
Yeah.
That was incredible. I love that. I remember my sister calls me at 2 o'clock in the morning, saying that my mom has passed away and she's been dead for 4 hours. They just found her in the house. The ambulance just came and the ambulance took her away. And I said, "Well, that's very sad. I'm very sorry." My sister, her name's Adela. I call her Adela. I said, "I'm very sorry, sis. I'll make plans to come across." But in my heart, I said, "Well, that's not right, because you promised me, Yahweh, that she will not die unless she's born again." And I knew in my heart that she wasn't ready yet. So immediately I said, not even out loud, in my sleep state, I said, "I actually speak life back into her. I command you to come back to life, Mom." And 15 seconds after that prayer, I've already put the phone down, my sister calls back and says the ambulance contacted her and said they found a pulse.
Yeah.
After my mom being dead for 4 hours already. Then when we went to visit her in the ICU, they couldn't understand why she was there and what happened. The only conclusion they could come to is that her heart stopped. And that's why her body and organs started failing. That's eventually what she died of.
Right.
The failed organs are due to the death that she had for the 4 hours, if that makes any sense. But that was incredible. And I was 1,000 miles away from her. That was all done in a measure so that others can see how powerful of a minister you are. You know, maybe not you guys, but that was kind of my thing. You know, it was nice to get that type of glory from people. And I realized very soon that in this time and age, that's not what it's about. It's not about the guy with the power for the hour. No, we would like to have that because that's nice. But it's not about that. It's about what's done in secret, because that's where your reward comes. You want to experience and do these things as a spirit being when no one can see you. Now, as a preacher and a teacher, unfortunately for us, we have to share these encounters so you have a doorway in. So what's done in the secret for us kind of gets exposed. But the idea is that no one knows about this stuff. The stuff that's happening in the earth right now is changing the nations of the world. And no one knows what's happening. No one can see it. But the sons and daughters are beginning to align things and propel things into place. How many of you understand that? Are you guys okay?
Yeah.
So I want to say that the blood of Yeshua is absolutely the key to everything we're experiencing right now. And it's much the same as engaging in the Yat Hay, the Vat Hay, engaging in the Yat Hay, the Shen, the Vat Hay, just engaging into who Yahweh is. You're stepping in through that blood, and it just overshadows you. Thank you, Chip. It brings it back into place. I was in my mind, I'll leave the sound is off. Let's leave the sound off. You guys can still hear me, right?
Yeah.
So the Father's desire for us is to begin to understand who we are. And just to walk that in the fullness. We've got the courts, we've got the perception, we've got the understanding, but we as the sons of Yahweh have to begin to walk it out in the full capacity.
Right.
And it's mind-blowing. It's absolutely mind-blowing. Exciting, right? You guys okay?
Yeah.